Few countries are as much associated with football as Brazil. For the people, it's more than just a sport, it's a culture. Often one that helps families and their promising youths from being swallowed up by the country's criminal underbelly. For all its links to football, even as far as making it the national sport, Brazil has been one of the more dominant forces on the international stage. From winning the World Cup to continuously churning out world-class talents, the country doesn't appear to be slowing down. But outside of its products and contribution to the sport, on the smaller stages of league football, Brazil has fallen behind compared to the biggest, most recognisable leagues of Europe. In this video, we'll be exploring more on that subject and answering the question, is Brazil becoming the next Premier League? Football has been a force in Brazil for well over a century. As mentioned earlier, it's the national sport of the country, and its presence can be traced back to the 1800s, when Tom Donahoe, a Scottish immigrant, introduced the sport to the locals. It didn't take long for the feverish excitement of the beautiful game to catch on. The first recorded match in Brazil was held sometime in 1894. As the 1900s rolled in, the popularity of the sport grew more rapidly, with the first footballing competition in the country established in 1902. Some 12 years later, the Brazilian Football Confederation was founded as a regulatory and oversight agency for football across all levels. Just 3 decades later, in the 1950s, the country was already playing host to a World Cup tournament. This would prove to be a significant period in the country's history. It established itself as one of the favourites for the tournament, going all the way to the final. However, they'd lose that competition to their continental rivals Uruguay, leaving 174,000 in attendance, stunned and lost for words. Between the 1950s and 60s, Brazilian football enjoyed some of its best years, producing world beaters like Zico, Pelé and Garrincha. Only 8 years after losing the World Cup final, Brazil would clinch its first in 1958. From then on, the country became a regular winner in the tournament, lifting the prestigious trophy another 4 times in 1962, 70, 94 and 2002. Even in the current convoluted world of sports, Brazil remains a competitive team on the international stage and a hub for developing the next generation of superstars. We're already seeing increased purchases from the league in the last 5 years, with many of these talents continuing to prove themselves on the biggest football stages. Besides the country's exploits and its widely prized talents, you would think that its local leagues would be more competitive and one of the best in the world. But that hasn't been the case for a long time. Don't be mistaken, the teams in the Brazilian leagues are good and are dominant forces in the continental football stage. For example, 5 of the last 6 teams to clinch the Copa Libertadores trophy have come from the Brazilian Serie A. In fact, the last 3 finals have seen 2 teams from this league. It's no surprise then that the Brazilian Serie A teams are in a much better position financially compared to their competition rivals. But that can't all be attributed to competition wins, but rather a 2021 regulatory change that allowed clubs to identify as corporations. This increased business opportunities for clubs immensely, attracting investment from North America and the Middle East. This growing financial capacity has led to talks about the creation of a new league capable of challenging arguably the most profitable league in football right now, the English Premier League. The move away from the archaic structure of the current league system is also to ensure these corporations are profitable for their investors both on and off the pitch. The English Premier League is the most thriving league in world football currently. When it comes to TV rights and payments, sponsorships, and other dealings in the financial side of the sport, none of the other top 4 or 5 European leagues can match the Premier League's dominance. So, comparing the Brazilian Serie A to the English Premier League raises a lot of questions. Some 30 years ago, the major clubs in the English football pyramid opted to create a super league of sorts, which became known as the Premier League. Whilst it appears the Brazilian clubs are trying to toe the same line now, this isn't exactly their first try. The original experiment didn't succeed beyond 5 years and was packed up in 1987. This was the first attempt at a Brazilian Premier League. The current attempt seems long overdue, and the new league would come with unique perks, such as higher revenue generation and autonomy from the Brazilian Football Confederation. However, it won't be without its flaws, with the main one being competitiveness. To overcome this hurdle, the teams involved would have to agree a financial system that makes sense for all of them. But that's easier said than done due to the wealth disparity across the league. For example, teams from Sao Paulo region are often more financially well-to-do than teams from any other part of the country. As such, negotiations for an applicable financial structure may be skewed toward either the wealthier or less wealthy clubs. If wealthier teams have their way, less wealthy teams may not get a fair share of the pie, which would hamper competitiveness in the long run. On the other hand, if the less wealthy teams are prioritised, wealthier teams might lose the incentive to join the league. There's also the problem of too many games. The league engages in multiple, often meaningless matches due for the state championship, with each of the 27 states in the country having their own tournament. Although these events are culturally relevant to the country's football history, they have since outlived their usefulness and only put athletes at risk. Not to mention that the idea of bigger clubs facing off against minuscule teams kills the spectacle of the beautiful game. It's not anywhere near the calibre of the FA Cup, which is rife with giant slayers and provides a spectacle every other year, regardless of the size of the sides involved. Finally, there's also the problem of historically huge clubs failing to live up to expectations. For example, Santos, a once formidable team in the division with Pelé on their books, was recently relegated. Although this isn't unheard of amongst the Premier League teams, the credibility of the new league is somewhat jeopardised if it involves a team that is historically and financially bigger but outplayed and outclassed in the current archaic league system. So, is the Brazilian League ready to become the new English Premier League? The answer is a frustrating no. That doesn't mean the Brazilian Serie A will never achieve an EPL-esque system, but it first has to iron out several issues. Compared to the top 5 European leagues, the Brazilian Serie A produces fewer expected goals. This isn't helped by the fact it performs this poorly despite having higher shots at goal, meaning the average quality of shots taken in the league is pretty bad. However, there are some bright spots for the league, such as its passing, ball carrying and performance under pressure. Stats in these categories put it on a par or better than the major European leagues. So it's also clear that the league and the clubs have got something right. Now, it just has to fix the problem of too many matches in a calendar year, improve chances of conversion, and create a big enough spectacle to draw audiences to its stadiums. If this is achieved, the unwavering passion of Brazilian fans and cheaper ticket prices compared to the European leagues might just help the Brazilian league give the EPL a run for its money.